Hi all, I'm Sarah Batchelor, Neuro-Spicy music teacher, still a teacher in the province of Alberta, sweltering in my unicorn onesie because today was pajama day. Is there another profession on the planet that has work pajamas? I think we're unique in that. And I'm overheating, so I'm going to lose the fun little pointy home. So, welcome to my channel. If you're new, if you've been here before, welcome back. On my channel, I talk about public education, advocacy, teaching music, and surviving as a neurodivergent music educator. I also tend to say the quiet part out loud about the realities that teachers, students, and families are facing here in Alberta when it comes to schools. So if that kind of content matters to you, please like, share, follow, do all the things, push the buttons so more people can join in our conversation. Right? So tonight I'm going to talk to you again about Bill 25, which was dropped on March 31st, 2026. And it was dropped under a very loaded title, Removing Politics and Ideology from Alberta Classrooms. And when I first saw the title, I went, what the heck are they doing to the curriculum now? Because if you've been to school, because our curriculum hasn't changed since 1988, social studies, 20 is all, grade 11 social studies, for those of you in other parts of the world, is legitimately called ideologies. No, wait, that's social 12. Social 10 is nationalism and internationalism. Social 10 is globalization. Sorry. All of you who are about to take grade 10 social studies, the answer to everything is globalization. You're welcome. So today, I want to talk to you about what this removing politics and ideology from Alberta classrooms actually means when it comes to flags. All right? I want to talk about the most absurd claim in this whole debate. And this is something I've wondered about and thought about a lot over the years, but this just really gives me an opportunity to talk about it. This idea that a pride flag is somehow more powerful than the culture kids are already surrounded by every single day. Because apparently, one pride flag is dangerous ideology. You've got a lifetime of straight messaging all around you, and that's just normal. So by that standard, Disney princess movies would be considered neutral. Hallmark Christmas movies, neutral. Valentine's Day in elementary school, neutral. Baby onesies that say future heartbreaker, neutral. Asking kindergartens and small people if they have boyfriends or girlfriends, neutral. Family worksheets with a mom, dad, 2 kids, and a dog, neutral. Gender reveal parties. Well, these are fine, of course. No, because nothing says straight quite like explosives, confetti, minor public safety hazards. Maybe that's what keeps it on this side of the rainbow. Because this is what makes the whole situation so ridiculous to me. When we are told that queer visibility is ideology, but straight, cis, heteronormative messaging is normal. We're told inclusion is political. But the endless messaging about what boys should be, what girls should be, who they should love, and which families count as normal, oh no, that's just culture. No, it's not. That's messaging too. We're just used to it. And honestly, because 90% of us fall into that category of the cisgendered, heteronormative, yeah, that is our world. But it isn't for everybody, right? So the irony is that these people, the same people who are panicking over the rainbow stickers, will turn around and then they're going to pretend that people are not constantly absorbing messages from the world around them, right? Movies, TV, ads, churches if you attend, right? Family expectations. I mean, those don't influence kids at all. That would be the biggest. I mean, oh my gosh. Dress codes, like sexualizing, not sexualizing, like dudes. Everyday language, right? Every time a boy and girl are assumed to like each other just for standing next to each other, right? Every time someone says, that's not ladylike, or man up, right? Every time straightness gets treated like the default and everything else gets treated like a debate. Not just like, oh, it's something different, but like it's a debate. But sure, right? The real problem, it's the pride flag. So along comes Bill 25, wrapped up in lovely words like neutrality and ideology, as if schools were somehow overflowing with radical queer propaganda instead of just trying occasionally to make sure kids do not feel invisible. Alberta's own description says Bill 25 would reinforce neutrality and set rules so schools display only the Canadian and Alberta flags unless exemptions are later allowed. And for the record, there has been an exemption allowed. It's a Franco flag, a French flag. I know that's not the right name for the flag. I just don't have the right name in front of me. So throw it in the comments and educate me, please. But I do know that there has been at least one other flag approved. And if we're just going to talk flags, What are they going to do in grade 1 social studies where the curriculum is literally flags of the world, right? I might even had some problems at my concert last week where I had all of the flags of the world up because we were doing FIFA, World of Sport and Music, right? But from where I'm sitting, it just looks like neutrality is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because somehow, if we let kids, I can't even talk today, sorry guys, because somehow letting queer kids know they belong gets called ideology. But a lifetime of dominant culture messaging never does. That's not neutrality though. That's just the dominant worldview throwing a tantrum because somebody else became visible. So I want to talk and this isn't LGBTQ related, but this is one of my personal stories about how I suddenly realized why this mattered. I have a child. I have lots of children, actually. I have 5. But my youngest is biracial and black and white, but looks black. And in small town Alberta was called black and many other things. Lots of reasons we moved to a larger center. But when he was little and growing up, he was just a normal little boy wandering around doing little boy things, kid things. And one day we were in Walmart and there was a big poster of, is it Miles Morales or Mike Morales? Anyways, Spider-Man, Black Spider-Man. And my kid stopped right in his tracks. Like he just stopped, his jaw hit the floor. And he just looked at that image. Like he just took it in. And he looked at me, he's like, I could be Spider-Man? And that's when it hit me. All of the superheroes, all of the things, and because he's got 4 older siblings who are also white, not biracial like him, he really doesn't see himself anywhere. In fact, he used to introduce himself to people like, "Hi, my name is, and I'm not adopted." Right? It was really sad, honestly, because he looks different. But when he saw Black Spider-Man, suddenly he could go to the barbershop and he could get a Black Spider-Man haircut. And that was so big for him. But it was also so big for me because I see myself everywhere. Right? Well, maybe wasn't seeing my neurodiverse self then, but I physically well represented, right? My child wasn't. And my child is hardly a visible minority, being black, being biracial. I mean, anyways, I just saw in that one example how much it meant to one little person to see themselves, or a version of themselves that they could identify with out in the real world. So I worry a little bit, when we start talking about this, because immediately it comes up with all lives matter, all students matter. Because the second I say something like, we want to make these kids who are feeling left out feel a little bit more visible, people go, well, can't we just support all kids? And on the surface, yeah, that's nice. That's the goal. Shouldn't we be supporting all kids? Especially in the world of education, that's what we do. But here's the problem. All kids is often used simply to avoid naming the kids who are not being treated equally, who are not seeing that representation. Because if all kids were already equally safe, equally seen, equally supported, these numbers we're about to talk about wouldn't happen. And trigger warning here, because I am going to talk a little bit about some self-harm statistics. So if that bothers you and you want to exit now, wishing you a great evening. But let's just look into some numbers here. So looking at this through the lens, if all kids were already equally safe, equally seen, and equally supported, would these numbers look like this? Okay, in Canada, 25 to 40% of students, or not students, of homeless youth, pardon me. Let's try this again. In Canada, 25 to 40% of homeless youth are 2S LGBTQ 1 plus, I plus. I never know if it's a 1 or an I, and I apologize. I have a friend who calls it the alphabet mafia. I think that's kind of cute and adorable. But this statistic is neither cute nor adorable. In fact, it's really upsetting. So 25 to 40% of homeless youth identify as somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. Other sources have put it closer to 24 to 25%, but I'm sorry, still 1 out of 4. That's huge overrepresentation compared with the overall, youth population. A federal Canadian source drawing on Egali's school climate research says 64% of students who identify in the LGBTQ universe felt unsafe at school. right? They cite some national surveys that report that 62% of these students not only feel unsafe, but hear homophobic comments daily or weekly. 30% have experienced cyberbullying, and 57% of trans students have been targets of mean rumors and lies. And when we talk about statistics, it's easy to kind of get lost in it because, well, my favorite statistic is the pickle statistic. 100% of people who eat pickles die. It's true, but it's not necessarily relevant, right? And you can do a lot with numbers. And so I think it's important at this point just to pause for a second and point out that what we're talking about when we're talking about 57%, is we're not talking 57% of the overall population. We're talking about 57% of 3% of the overall population, because I've read numbers between 1.8 and 3% for trans individuals in society, up to 10% for the LGBTQ individuals. So when we're talking, these are still huge numbers of those people. And when I say those people, I don't know, I'm having trouble with words tonight. You guys know where my heart is on all this, though, right? We are talking about framing it through the lens of, we're not talking about everybody. This isn't an all children are supported thing. This is talking about a specific group for these statistics. So do what you will with that, right? And in 2019, we had another study come out. It was called the Canadian Trans and Non-Binary Youth Health Survey. So only 16% of kids who took this survey rated their mental health as good or excellent. 88% reported a chronic mental health condition such as depression or anxiety. And 64% had considered unaliving in the past year. Frightening. And 21% had actually attempted. So if you want to make it local, Egali says in Alberta, 90% of trans students in its school climate surveys report being verbally harassed based on their gender or sexual identity. So no, this is not some imaginary issue invented by activists with rainbow lanyards. So when people say, why can't we just support all kids? My answer is, well, yeah, we should. We should. This is how we support all kids. But you do not get to say all kids as a way to ignore the kids who are clearly telling us they feel unsafe, they feel unseen, and they feel pushed to the margins. Because if all children matter, that means absolutely nothing. We can't say it. It's meaningless if we exclude a certain demographic. So let's be honest, if the concern is really messaging, stop hiding behind neutrality. And just say that. Say environment matters. Say visibility matters. Say culture teaches kids what's normal. Because if that is true, then kids have been growing up inside one very loud, very consistent set of messages for a very long time. So why is it only called indoctrination when the message shifts from here is the only acceptable way to be to other people exist too? That's the part I cannot wrap my head around. I cannot get over, and I need people to help me make sense of, because a child seeing a pride flag does not suddenly become queer, but a child absolutely learns something from the environment around them. They learn who is safe to be. They learn who gets included. They're learning who gets talked about and who gets talked about like they matter. They learn whose existence is treated as ordinary and whose existence is treated as controversial. Not extraordinary, not unusual, controversial. That's the messaging. So, not in this ridiculous fear-mongering way. People mean it, honestly, though. But in the very real way, culture teaches kids who belongs. So no, the rainbow is not the thing flooding the school with messaging. The messaging has always been there. The difference is that now some kids who used to be erased are asking not to be. And apparently that is what some people find threatening. Right? Funny how one little symbol of belonging is treated like dangerous ideology. Well, the actual majority culture gets to parade around like this is just the way things are. If representation is really that powerful, heterosexual culture has been running the biggest ad campaign in history. Right? I said it in another video this week. When a kid gives me something like a pride flag and I stick it on my desk and they come back in the next day, they go, oh, I'm important enough to my teacher that they kept my flag. When a kid comes into my classroom with a drawing, or today it was a little pom-pom duck, and I put it on a little stand, I have this little thing where I'm gathering more and more creatures as the year goes on, but I put it there and it becomes a proud flock, member of the flock. And the kids come in the next day and they see who's joined the flock and they're like, oh, who made that? And we talk about it and they're like, oh, that's so cool. And they feel loved, they feel seen. The pride flag is no different in my world, right? When people are getting upset with signs that say we all belong, that tells me their problem isn't the messaging, it's the fact that they don't believe that everyone belongs. And this is public school. Everyone belongs in public school. As a teacher, it is my job to remain as neutral as I can. I'm human, right? The way I speak on my channel here is not how I speak at school. In fact, I know a couple of my students have stumbled upon my channel and I'm like, because I don't share necessarily all of who I am and all of what I believe. I find points that I can vibe with kids on or whatever. If a student mentions that they're Mormon, I'm like, hey, me too. You going to watch General Conference this next weekend, right? If a kid who's Muslim talks about fasting, I can say, oh, you know what? In my religion, we also have fasting once a month. It's a little different than yours, but what's the same? And it's just as a bridge to conversation. It's never as a, this is what I believe and I think you should believe it too. It's like just as a point of comparison. Some people believe this. Some people believe this. Some people believe this. Make up your own mind. Ask your parents, right? This is how teachers have been teaching. And part of my problem with Bill 25, because it assumes that we have not, right? It just assumes we're out there, not only waving the flag, but throwing glitter until everybody touched by the glitter is now gay. But that's not what's happening. Even when I'm dressed as a unicorn and being whimsical, it's not what's happening, right? If you really want everyone to feel like they belong, then you need to allow them to express themselves in ways that make sense to them, not in ways that make sense to you, right? It's not a threat to you and your identity to have other people who are different exist around you, right? We live in a world where people are like one side or the other, and that's not how it is. We're just more and more polarized all the time, and it's dangerous, right? There's so much conflict just because we look at differences first. And part of that is how we are wired, right? Part of that is human nature. Part of that is how we are socialized. But no, we can unlearn things. We can learn different, right? When you know better, you do better. And I'm pretty sure I may have quoted that wrong. Maybe not Maya Angelou, but great poet. But even greater thought, right? When we know better, we do better. And honestly, I really hope that we can figure this out, because it shouldn't be a threat to you that somebody else in the room thinks differently than you, right? There's nothing better than a good conversation. And, we're not here to change people's minds, because you can't change people's minds with facts. I've learned that. You really need to have some heart and emotion and things in there too. And people will change when they're ready to change. And all we can control is ourselves. All we have influence over is, our own families, our own children. And so we instill those beliefs in our kids and we send them out the door. And as a teacher, let me tell you, those beliefs stick. Those beliefs stick hard. Every day I watch kids stand up for what they believe, religiously, LGBTQ wise, favorite movies, what's cool, what's not, what their family says is okay, what isn't. We're talking about underage drinking, things like this. Believe me, your kids are listening. You're doing a good job indoctrinating your kids. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but I know that I've done a good job raising my child to understand our family's values, right? And I know you guys have too, because I see it every day. And the core value I see in across the board tends to be that we're just good people with a little bit of a different perspective. What worries me is when kids come in with the idea that different isn't okay. I've had children who were fighting on the playground, so there were three young ladies, lower elementary age. So-and-so won't play with me, right? This sort of situation. I'm like, well, can all three of you play together? And they're like, no, we can't, because so-and-so is from this country and so-and-so is from that country, and they're not allowed to play together. So we can't all play together. To which I said, there's no countries at school, just go play. But That doesn't come from school. That doesn't come from teachers. That came from home, right? And it probably wasn't explicitly said, you can't play with the children from other cultures. Because I know the families of these children. I know they're good people. I don't think they're that excluding. These kids picked up on that. All right? It's the same as when my child, who is biracial, looked at a police officer and asked if he was going to shoot him. And I was horrified because that is not messaging that our family supports. Right? This was around the George Floyd timing. My kid was 8. I was mortified because police are our friends. They're here to help us. We like the police. We support the police. We work with the police because we're not doing anything wrong, and they're here to help us. They're here to keep us safe. He picked that up somewhere, right? Your children are picking up things from the world around them, but what you were teaching them at home, those core values are sticking with them. So I don't know if that's a comfort to you or not. Just know they are. Your kids are living the lives that, for the most part, right? Especially in elementary. When they get older and they start to find some autonomy and branch out and, want to try out different names and be silly and, right? Like, that doesn't even have to do with gender half the time, right? Like, I don't know. I hated my name when I was little. I wanted to be called something else for a while. Oh, well, here I am, right? It's fine, I think we just need to relax a little bit about this stuff. But when the government starts putting it in writing in legislation, I get concerned, right? Your children are being raised in a heteronormative, cisgendered society. The fact that we are extending what we consider reality to include other people with other belief systems, with other values, not that LGBTQ follows that, but like other ways of being, it's not a competition. It's not pie. You don't get less because we're sharing, right? So I leave that with you, and I just hope that you can continue to go forth in kindness and compassion and open-mindedness, because unlearning stuff is hard. I know that. I can speak to that. It is hard, but the work needs to be done because all children deserve this. All children deserve to be seen, supported, heard, and to do that, some of us older people, we have some unlearning to do, some new learning to do. So I leave that with you tonight, and I hope you continue to have teachers' backs, because we have your kids, which means we have yours. Enjoy your weekend.